Hey.
What's up, comrades? Happy not New Year yet. I've got Comrade D from Seattle, who you guys have seen here before, and Comrade Aaron Dixon, who we've all been awaiting. Nobody awaits Dominic. Nobody awaits me. But the comrade will be on a bit later. But right now, we're going to get a report from what's going on in Is it Rojava or Rojava? I've always
Um,
been confused on that.
I mean, there they'll call it the Democratic Autonomous Administration of Northeast Syria. Here it would translate to Rojava, which is the Kurdish word for the region.
Okay.
Um, our Kurdish word for the West, which I know is super technical, but um, all right. So I'm gonna preface this as I'm not a master of either social ecology, democratic confederalism, or fully of the situation on the ground. I just know what I have been taught and what I'm getting um, in my apologies, y'all. That is our interviewee texting me. Sorry, BRG. Aaron
No,
was
no.
having trouble with the link. Mm.
Oh, no need to apologize to me. Dominic is also a DSA Nepo baby, hence the ancient shirt he's wearing. Yeah, I actually read that interview between you and your dad. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's grumpy with it because he never got to do his final rounds of edits, and I had to point out we couldn't wait an extra
Oh,
3 weeks for him to get around to it. So
yeah. So you're not a red
yeah,
diaper baby, you're a pink diaper baby.
something like that. He was definitely not a Communist Party member. So if we're going old school, yeah, he's
Yeah.
I would
Well,
fall into the pink category.
back
Um,
then the CPUSA was basically was to the right of DSA actually.
everyone else, frankly. All right. So if I stop and go for this, this is just
You good, Dominic?
yeah. No, I'm just trying to make sure that this works.
All right. If you need a new link, let
That
me
the
know.
email sent to the right place. All right. 1 second. I'm gonna resend the email. Compose.
Anti-Assad dipshits are feeling the heat after trust. You know, Solar is paradox. You always have the most off-the-wall opinion. My hat off to you. Are feeling the heat after trusting the imperialist West. Israel and Turkey are carving Syria. It's a bit more nuanced than that, I would think. But Comrade
So do you
Dominic is
know
here
what
to
the
explain.
so I'm gonna be blunt. You know what the left, because there are some great pieces on the fall of Assad and the failure of the Western left, and what they'll say about that stance, it's a failure and to understand anything about international politics.
Yeah,
They might also
and
tell
they
you to do some anatomically incorrect things, but I don't know what the swearing policy is on the stream these days.
we don't have one.
I know because they've told I've seen some of the comments that they have made. Anyway, so we're gonna go over what the hell is going on in Syria, specifically northeast Syria, as that is what it pertains to our drive today, our donation drive today. For those of you who don't know, this stream is technically a fundraiser for the Emergency Committee for Rojava, which is an organization of a lot of journalists who have been over to the Autonomous Administration of Northeast Syria, but also some folks that do social ecology work here in the United States, most notably Murray Bookchin's daughter, Debbie Bookchin. So, for those of you who don't know, there's been a three-way, or more like eight-way civil war um, in Syria since the Arab Spring. basically, with about 4 sides that have survived right now. You have the now fallen Assad regime. Outside of that, you had Turkish-backed militias, which were in this case HTS, which is the one who are currently the interim government down in Damascus. You had the Syrian National Army, which is a front for like basically directly Turkish-backed militias and include like a lot of former ISIS members. They're terrible. You have Daesh, also known as ISIS. For I know many of us here are American and are from the West and kind of are familiar with ISIS from the mid 2010s. And finally is the Syrian Democratic Forces, also known as the Autonomous Administration of Northeast Syria, also known as Rojava. For those of you who don't know about Rojava, Rojava in itself is a libertarian socialist experiment. The closest example, I would say, would probably be down in Chiapas with the Zapatista experiment down there. This region is multi-ethnic, has its basis in politics in something called democratic confederalism, which is based off of social ecology, which is a mix of a lot of Marxist influence, but also a lot of Bookchinite anarchist influences as well. Specifically, the term is coined by Murray Bookchin and has a heavy focus on direct democracy. If you'd like to learn more, I'm going to bring up some links at the end of the report, but I'll keep it short. After that, all right, so currently I'm going to show you 2 maps. So this is the map as it stands since as of today, but this is a map from a month ago. So the yellow is the SDF, which is primarily known as a Kurdish government, but this is not correct. In fact, the majority of Syrian Democratic Forces are Arab militias, not Kurdish or any other ethnic, particular ethnic group. The way that the militia system is designed is very decentralized. It's basically each community has their runs their own, and there's a level of democracy in there. I'm not going to go into all the details because I am not qualified to, but it's also we would be here for an extra 3 hours. Now, if you guys can't see, yes.
A second. So, Elder Comrade Aaron was able to join finally. How are you? How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I had to join you on my phone because
right.
for some reason I couldn't do it my email.
Yeah, damn technology. Am I right? So
Dang it.
It's a great honor to have you here, sir. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. But I also interrupted Dominic's report on Syria. And I don't want him to fly down here from Seattle to slap me. So
Oh yeah, please finish listening to that.
Thank you, Comrade Aaron. So yeah, as of a month ago, the region that the Autonomous Administration govern, control, whatever you would like to call it, included basically everything east of the Euphrates, but also included some neighborhoods in Aleppo, and this area around the city of Manbij. So since HTS started pushing south and the militias that were down here, if you guys can see my mouse, started pushing into Damascus, the SNA, which is all these super nationalistic militias, for these, I hate to use the term puppet, but are what essentially puppet militias for Turkey, as Turkey views Kurdistan as a danger to its existence as a state. Because if ethnic minorities in South Turkey see Rojava as a liberated zone or a model for areas in the south that would in the south of Turkey that have historically been oppressed, especially within the last since the rise of Turkish nationalism in the 20s. But Manbij was taken, along with a lot of the areas in Tel Rifat, which is part of Aleppo. It actually consists of a lot of Kurdish neighborhoods up here. So, if we take a look at the map, over the last month, we see two things. One, the red is gone, except for this little spot right here. So that's all the Assad forces have collapsed. But the SNA have pushed the SDF out of Aleppo and also out of Manbij. Now, it should be said two things. One, this is not popular in Manbij. It actually has caused a lot of protests. But two, this has actually caused a lot of mass displacement of people, especially Kurdish minorities have been very nervous about being in the area. They have been targeted. There have been targeting of other ethnic and religious minorities as well. So this has caused a migration into the greater autonomous state administration. However, we have some good news. First off, this is the Tishreen Dam. This was hotly contested recently, but we have seen the SDF start pushing back into this area. And there has been several protests in Manbij, but also a movement of troops there. So we are sealing the Manbij Military Council, which is that SDF militia, that militia made up of community members, start pushing back into Manbij. The one other issue we are running in, or the one big thing we're also seeing is up here, and this is called a city called Kobani, and we are seeing the Turkish military start to amass troops in this area on the border, demanding a big demilitarized zone, which is what they claim. This green area is over here. Basically, they are trying to enforce their will on this on the region. And what has happened is that U.S. troops have actually moved in, and as long as other international coalition troops have actually moved into Kobani to prevent physical interdiction by Turkey, because international politics is messy, frankly, and civil wars especially so. So those are the two biggest incidents that I've been focused on right now. If you would like, I'm going to provide some resources. The big one I'm going to suggest there's three. The Rojava Information Center is a great journalist collective that does a lot of on-the-ground reporting. There's also Tekoshina Anarchist, which is an anarchist organization on the ground that does a lot of open source work and provides a daily update. There is some other parts of this I did not talk about, just because there have been a lot of good things. There's been a lot of rallies in support of the autonomous administration in the region itself. But if you would like, daily information, this is a great resource. I'm going to ask y'all, there is a lot of movement. There's a lot of people being displaced, and there's a lot of people coming back from Turkey that are going to need support. So today we are helping with the fundraising drive for Emergency Committee for Rojava. They're an advocacy organization here in the United States. They do a lot of education around the concepts of democratic and federalism, but also advocate for the autonomous administration in the United States, and also getting community organizations to go and often provide some financial support. So I'd strongly advise it. I will say right now, and I'm going to stop the advertisement after this, they are also doing their end of the year fundraiser. So if you donate certain amounts, you'll actually get some swag. Some of it are some pretty cool books, some stickers, and possibly a t-shirt, depending. Aaron, actually, I had not told you this yet, but the ECR would like to send you a gift basket for being on the program today.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. So that's everything from Rojava. If there are questions later, let me know and I'll provide what I can. Again, I'm not a master on this stuff.
I guess the thing, like for some reason, like American and Western leftists in general are very like undialectical when it comes to active revolutionary processes. Like I guess the dogma has frozen a lot of people's brains. Like if they don't speak exactly like they speak, for one, Americans, I guess, of this generation have never like. I mean, we've gone through the George Floyd uprising, we've gone through the Mike Brown uprising, but like there's never been a process like Rojava, like an active struggle for like with arms in hand in this century against like you literally have Rojava. I was looking at your map. It's right next door to Turkey, which wants to basically eradicate these people. Like if I recall correctly, the Turks called like they deny the existence. They deny the existence of a Kurdish people like entirely. They call them Mountain Turks, if I recall correctly. So you have these people that are fighting a life and death struggle, like they're being pushed by Turkey from the north, and then you've got Daesh, ISIS to the south, and then you've got all types of other nasty people over to the west. Like this is literally a life or death struggle, and as a black person in the United States that identifies as a revolutionary black nationalist and communist, like it bears a lot of parallels. Like if black people, if we had a situation like the Republic of New Africa, like if we were able to take over those states back in the day, like we would have had the exact same situation. So I think it's really important when we talk about struggles that are going on in the Middle East, in the Philippines, in India, all across the world. I think we have to look at like what people are fighting for. Like these people are fighting for national liberation, just like my people are, just like Chicano people, just like indigenous people, just like various oppressed nationalities. Like Puerto Rico doesn't even have any electricity for the new year. Like this is something that happens a lot. Every other month, the entire island has no electricity. So I think that what a lot of American dogmatic so-called Marxist Leninists, because really the way that they think doesn't really bear all that much similarity to either Marx or Lenin. Like I think that the best thing that they can do is actually try to learn from these things instead of trying to cast their own nonsense on it or be like, you can't advise these people what to do. Like Asada in her biography said the same thing. Like when she was struggling with the Progressive Labor Party and all these Trotskyist dogmatist people, like they're saying, oh, you should go organize a factory. And she's like, why aren't you organizing a factory? I'm in school. And like she ended up calling them like wimps that couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag trying to tell the Vietnamese people what to do. So like when I look at all this nonsense on Twitter, it bears remarkable similarities to what Asada Shakur was describing in her book. But yeah, I really, really appreciated that report. Like a lot of people, uh, we know that Rojava is a thing. We know that the struggle over there is going on, but we don't know like exactly what the Kurdish people and their allies are up against. So I really, really appreciate that report. Also, nice white PG flag.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one thing I found amongst Western leftists is they don't seem to realize that the most critical people of the revolution are the people on the ground.
Yeah,
Like they'll try to do this self ownership, but like, look, I've talked to people like veterans of the YPJI or and YPGI, and I have talked to like long term journalists that have been over there, and they're like, yeah, no, the revolution's flawed, and they're constantly trying to change that. BRG, you and I have talked about it before, where you have this. One of the issues they're having is like, um, uh, for those of you who don't know on here, a big portion of uh, I'm just going to say Rajab in politics because it's easier, and uh, the other answer, I know how to speak Kurmanji a little bit and how to pronounce Kurmanji. I do not know how to pronounce Syriac um, or the Syriac languages. Um, but they're like the basis of the politics there is based around neighborhood councils and committees and assemblies. So think like a union, but it's your neighborhood. And they have issues with people actually showing up to meetings. And that has been something they've been trying to fight for like 8 years. And they're the first folks that are going to criticize that. The name change comes out of criticism to actually represent groups outside the Kurds, the name to autonomous administration, groups outside the Kurds in the region, because it is a multi-ethnic region. So it's understanding it's a fluid situation, and like these folks are working on and we're doing the folks are doing the best they can with the tools given. I'll be back in a second.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to do that. It's kind of hard to like make people come to meetings when there's a war on, I guess. But while we're waiting for Comrade Dominic to come back, Comrade Aaron is here. If you haven't read this book, well, I blurry camera. If you haven't read this book, My People Are Rising, you should. Panther biographies, I think, are really, really essential to understanding. Of course, I've also got Black Against Empire behind me, but I, just the ordinary day-to-day struggles of people who were in the party, people who like, if I recall correctly, Seattle was the first chapter of the Black Panther Party founded outside of California.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Okay. Um, and like what a lot of people who study the Panthers do is like they simply think that, oh, okay, so you had these young black people, men and women, they came out with guns and then the FBI crushed them. But they don't like understand like what happened in the like the Black Panther Party technically did not cease to exist until like 1982. So you had like a whole like Dominic, you're giving me background. Wait, no, never mind. But like you literally had a period in the Black Panther Party's history when like the Black Panther Party was a political machine. Like they ran the campaign of the first black mayor of Oakland, Lionel Wilson. So you have all this stuff going on, and both me and Dominic are members of Democratic Socialists of America. I actually, in the appendix of the book, one of the guys who founded DSA, Michael Harrington, y'all had The Other America, which I have not read, but it was on your reading list. That was kind of neat because like um, in modern day DSA discourse, Michael Harrington was a social democrat, but it just shows that like we should read a variety of things because you never know where good insight will come from. Um, but again, really, really glad to have you here. This was actually a reread for me. I'm gonna try not to fanboy too hard. Um, so I guess uh, I took questions from a like variety of people. I was like, hey, I'm going to be interviewing a Panther elder. If you have any questions, submit them. So most of these come from me, but there are a few from other comrades in DSA and a variety of other organizations. So the first is Comrade Dixon. What similarities do you see between the 1960s and 70s manifestation of the movement for Black liberation and the struggle today, and what differences?
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure, sure. What similarities, like what commonalities do you see between the 60s and 70s manifestation of the movement for Black liberation and the struggle for day, in the struggle today, and what differences?
Today. I don't see too many similarities, to be quite honest, because you have to understand that um, it was a different time period that my generation grew up in. We grew up in segregation. We grew up with the oral tradition. We grew up with strong families. We grew up with strong communities. We grew up with the connection to slavery because many of our grandparents and great grandparents had been slaves. And so, it was something different that was pushing us. We had history behind us that was pushing us. And at that time, there were revolutions all over the world. There were revolutions all throughout South Africa. I mean, through Africa. There were revolutions all through South America. Che Guevara and Fidel Castro had just, 8 years prior, had taken over Cuba, and Che Guevara's book came out. And actually around that time, a film of Che Guevara came out, and the Vietnam War was going on, which was a revolutionary struggle. So we were part of a international revolutionary struggle throughout the whole world, and so that's what we grew in, and we took our position in the world as revolutionaries in America. And we had so many great leaders. Even before the party, we had Malcolm X. We had Jim Williams, who started the Republic of New Africa. We had Stokely Carmichael. We had H. Rep. Brown. We had Martin Luther King. So we had a lot of James Foreman. So we had a lot of people who, uh, look at for not only for inspiration but for political education. And then of course, we had a lot of great leaders in the Black Panther Party. Um, there's Bunchy Carter, who was head of the Southern California chapter, which was the strongest chapter in the Black Panther Party in Southern California in LA, who was very dynamic, very powerful, very political, and had a lot of similarities to Huey. And you had Bunchy and John Huggins actually in LA. Then in Chicago, you had Fred Hampton, one of the uh, um, most unbelievable human beings that you would ever want to find. Then you had people that you haven't heard of, like Field Marshal Don Cox, um, you know, um, Big Man, Emory Douglas, uh, Masai Hewitt, who was the Minister of Education, who was from LA. So, it's a completely different time, and it's really unfair to compare our time to the young people in the movement today, because there's just you just can't compare anything, and see I don't see hardly any resemblances. Now, I was very happy to see about seeing the Black Lives Matter movement. I had a lot of hope that the Lives Matter movement would evolve. But see, that's the thing about the party is what Huey taught us was that everything is in a constant state of flux, and that everything is always changing. And when we joined the party, we were given a book list of 25 books, and we had to read. We had to read 2 hours a day. And we had our newspaper. Huey had the wisdom to create the newspaper because he understood that the newspaper was the most powerful weapon that we had. And came out for 16 years straight without stop, even though the FBI did everything in their power to stop that newspaper from coming out. And so, our leader, Huey, was very philosophical, and he was only 24 years old when he started the party, but he was much more enlightened and educated internationally than, uh, probably anybody in America at the time. And so, what we were taught that power is the ability to define phenomena and make it act in a desired manner. And that's why our paper was so important, because we were able to define the struggle in America and what was happening in our communities. And also through the newspaper, we had an international section. And that's when I first learned about the Black Panther Party. But we were taught that everything in a constant state of change. And so the party was always evolving according to what our enemy was doing. When a lot of us joined the Black Panther Party, we were Black nationalists. But it became very clear when we joined the party that the party was about internationalism. So we had to change a lot of people's minds. We had to educate a lot of people about about internationalism, how important other struggles and other movements were. And we did this by developing coalitions. You know, our first coalition was with the Peace and Freedom Party in Southern California, a liberal white organization that ran party members for different political positions. And then we moved and created a coalition with the Brown Berets and AIM, American Indian Movement, and many other radical organizations. And in 1969, Fred Hampton took that to another level by creating the Rainbow Coalition. So, which was made up of everybody knows Puerto Ricans, poor whites, and blacks. So, you know, we were always evolving, and that's what I was hoping for with the Black Lives Matter movement, that they would evolve. But I never saw any indication that they were going to evolve from what they had started off to, and they became very stagnant. And the way that they had their leadership, you know, their leadership was I'm sorry, I must say was flaky.
Money hungry.
And did a lot of damage to the organization. But like I said, you know, it's not fair to compare them to us because it was a whole different circumstance. But when you joined the Black Panther Party, you were given not only you were given a booklet, but you were, you know, we were, when Bobby Steele came and met us, he told us we had to have 2,000 rounds of ammunition and 2 weapons. And we had to have weapons class. We had weapons class once a week. We had political education class once a week. And we were understood that we had to defend ourselves. We had to protect ourselves against the enemy by any means necessary. So, you know, we were prepared to die. Those of us who were in the Black Panther, we were prepared to die. You know, we were willing to die. And we worked sometimes 24 hours a day. But mostly we worked 7 days a week until there was a point that we realized we had to day out. So we were made up of, you know, we were very dedicated and we were politically educated. You know, we knew about different struggles and different movements. We studied Marxism, Marxist Leninism, but we understood that Marxist Leninism has at times can be used in a dogmatic way. And there were some people in the party who took Marxist Leninism and were dogmatic. Um, so, so you know, that's my answer to your question.
Hey, thank you, Comrade Harry. Going back to your criticism, which is correct, by the way, of the Black Lives Matter movement, I can't help but recall when you mentioned that you met Bill Cosby when you were flying in San Francisco, and like he called Huey Newton a 2-bit. Hold on,
Yeah,
somebody's making noise. It was Dominic, but he called Huey Newton basically a criminal. And
yeah,
you mentioned that like this was the beginning. I guess you mentioned the fact that back in um back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, like we had ties to the communalist tradition, which goes all the way back to Africa, of our ancestors who were in slavery and who went through like Jim Crow and all of these horrible things. So that's what led, I think, to the creation of leaders such as Fred Hampton, such as Malcolm X, because like you said, it was this was life or death struggle. And now, after integration, after certain black people have been allowed to rise up the ranks and become part of the imperialist structure to get money for themselves, like Bill Cosby, like O.J. Simpson, like Barack Obama, like all these others. So we had that communalism. It was replaced with individualism. Like if you listen to our hip hop, to our rap, it's all about get a bag. Everybody else can just disappear. All I care about is myself. Whereas if you listen to music from the 50s and 60s, it's about getting together. It's about struggling for our rights. It's about serving the people, which is one of the mottos of the Black Panther Party. And now the motto seems to be serve myself. So when we have movements, like you have a variety of people who are raised up, in many cases, by the ruling class themselves to be so called leadership. And then next thing you know, they've turned around and they've bought mansions for themselves. They've turned around and like the people continue to struggle, whereas the leaders uh they get big positions and they forget all about the people and they sell the people out. So I definitely think that the conditions that our people found themselves in contributed to the rise of the Black Panther Party. Whereas nowadays, like you said, there's really no comparison because it's a remarkably different um, cultural and political landscape. Um, yeah, I was reading Huey P. Newton's functional definition of politics. It's actually one of my favorite quotes, by the way. Power is the ability to define a phenomenon and make it act in the according manner. That's what I keep telling people in DSA when they're like, "Oh yeah, we have to back such and such." Like, do we have power in this situation? Like, one of my favorite parts of your book is when the Black Panther Party um, was able to basically take multiple levels of control in the city of Oakland. Like it would be pretty easy for DSA to do that because in many cities we do have a pretty decent machine. But also stuff is so like there's really no I guess today there's no I was about to say democratic centralism, but like it's just all over the place. And I guess that's part of being in a multi-tendency organization. But to exercise that level of power, like you have to be able, in my opinion, to one mobilize a lot of the masses, not just people who are already in the movement, but actually turn people out to vote. Get people who have never voted before in their lives. Like the black youth turnout rate in the elections is steadily declining. In aldermanic elections and mayoral elections, in many cases, it's single digit or low double digits because people like to see all these politicians as crooked. So I think if we had actual people's candidates like Elaine Brown, like Bobby Seale, and others that were running at that time, and we if we actually build a base in the community like the Black Panther Party did, because like we have a variety of issues that nobody is addressing. We have in the 80s it was crack. Now it's fentanyl, which is literally killing people. We have continued police brutality. We have vigilante murderers that are getting off for free. Like we had Daniel Penny, who literally strangled an unhoused black brother to death on the New York subway, and he was just set free, and he's allowed to hang out with the vice president of the United States. So there are contradictions that are still happening, but I think it will take more firm discipline and, like you said, political education because a lot of people are confused. Like they think, oh, if we just vote this person in, or if we protest enough, or if we like, it has to be a coalescence of all of these things, and it has to be rooted in the people. Like I think the major reason why the movement isn't really a movement, like it doesn't involve millions of people, is because one, social media, people think that you can just make a Twitter post that, oh, I'm an activist now. Like, no, you have to actually go out in the streets and be with the people. And then two, a lack of political education. Like there are literally people saying that you don't have to read theory. And then in the Black Panther Party, you had to read 2 hours a day if you were in leadership. But now you have people on Twitter saying, oh, we don't have to read theory. Theory is racist. I'm like, okay. So it's just all, yeah, we need help. That's all I can say. We need help because like things I would even say are getting worse. Like combined with the individualism, combined with the nihilism that seems to have beset a lot of younger people. Like no, then you have the climate apocalypse that's coming. Like you have like Miami, New Orleans, all these coastal cities are basically going to be gone in another 200 years. Like I personally think the time for playing is over. Um, and I really like how you brought up internationalism because I don't know if you're familiar, Comrade Aaron, but there's this group of people who call themselves foundational Black Americans, FBAs, who are basically like they're anti-Black immigrant, and they're mainly an online thing. Although I have run into several in real life, like they're basically anti everybody. Like if you're familiar with the situation in Chicago, like you have Black people that are literally protesting to get migrants out of their community. I'm like, but we were all migrants at one time or the other. Like my family literally came up here from Mississippi in the 60s. So we were all migrants. So why would you I don't know. I guess it's again, it ties back to the individualism. I don't know if they see the Latino people as competition for resources or something, which is again what the capitalists and imperialists and racists want us thinking. But it's just silly to me. Like, especially knowing about the internationalist tradition of the Black Panther Party, of Malcolm X, who literally spent a lot of time in Africa, of Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, who literally had moved to Africa, and now you have black people who are hating Africans. Now, it's just bizarre. Like, in a way, I see why a lot of elders think that our generation is screwed, because like this is some entirely new stuff.
Yeah, yeah. There's been a lot of dumbing down of our society in America for the last, I think the last 45, 50 years. And social media hasn't helped. It's made things more confusing for people in terms of being able to understand things and be able to think correctly. And the fact that when we were growing up, we America used to be, surprisingly, it was communal. In all communities, it was communal. You know, we had the cultural value system that applied to everybody. That was respect for the elders, that the children were the most important element in the community, that the family was the most was something that people worked towards keeping together, even if people were no longer in love with each other. They stayed together for the sake of the family. And the next part of that cultural value system was the community. Everybody participated in the community. Our community was united around taking care of our kids and doing different things and looking out for the kids. And so, things were very communal. And as we began to move forward in the late 70s, you started seeing this narcissism begin to arise in America, and people becoming very narcissistic. And then we got into the 80s, and 80s was a complete flip from communal living and communal support to individualism. And Ronald Reagan did a tremendous amount of damage uh, to America and getting us to this point, point of greed. A lot of people don't realize up until 1981, before Ronald Reagan was elected, that the wealthy were paying 70% taxes, which that money went to provide better medical care, went for subsidized education, college education. It went for a lot of things. It even, we kind of had some kind of socialism going on, believe it or not, back in the 70s. But when Ronald Reagan got into office, he cut the taxes of the wealthy down, and every president after him did a tax cut on the wealthy, including Clinton and Obama. And Obama really began to move the Democratic Party to the middle. And so, and then, Ronald Reagan, Ronald Reagan destroyed the unions. He fired all those workers that worked in the airline industry, traffic controllers. He just fired them all. And the other corporations took notice of that. And so they did the same thing. So the unions were destroyed under Ronald Reagan. And then he made it legal for pharmaceuticals to be able to advertise on TV, because up until 1986, pharmaceuticals were not allowed to advertise on TV. And so once the pharmaceuticals were to be able to do that, they became bigger, stronger, and much more powerful. Their lobby was much more stronger. And so they could get things pushed through that ordinarily they would not have been able to get through before. And that's where the Oxycontin epidemic came about. It was the pharmaceuticals that created that that epidemic. But before that, we had that epidemic under Ronald Reagan. He joined forces with Oliver North and bought all that cocaine into America. And not only were they bringing cocaine in, they were bringing guns, and it was coming in by the truckloads, the plane loads, the train loads. NAFTA really opened the door for the cocaine to be easier to come in from Mexico in trucks. And the trucks weren't even searched or checked or anything. Clinton and his state was one of the places where cocaine was flying into America at that airport. I can't remember the name of the airport. And that really, that crack cocaine epidemic really, you know, did a great job in really almost destroying the Black community.
Yeah.
Because we had before that we had a strong family, and no Black kids were not in foster care up until 1990, when the crack cocaine epidemic happened, because the crack cocaine began to destroy the families. Black mothers have always been the most maternalistic mothers in the world, because they took care of slave masters' kids. They took care of his kids after the slavery was over. So they were very maternalistic. But when you smoke crack cocaine, that maternalism disappeared. And so you had the breakdown of the family. You had a breakdown of the uncles and the aunties who would usually take kids in, breakdown of the grandmothers. That almost damn the whole community became on crack. So there's nowhere for the kids to go. And then the gangs began to grow because of the cocaine epidemic. And this provided them more money to make. And they became more violent towards each other with all these new weapons, and white folks started opening up gun stores in the Black community. Trains were left with weapons full of guns in different Black communities all across the country. And so, that really almost destroyed the Black community. Plus, we had this greedy thing that started to emerge under Ronald Reagan. This
Greed is good.
tremendous greed, and this tremendous, I call it super predatory capitalism. Capitalism, not only, it became super predatory under Ronald Reagan. That's where we are now. And that's one of the things that really is destroying our society and our communities, is this greed and this individualism. People only care about themselves. They don't care about anybody else. They don't care about Gaza. They don't care about Palestine. They don't care about what's happening in Syria, let alone know what's happening there, or the Congo, or Sudan, or many other places where these tremendous atrocities are being carried out every single day, in the name of America and American taxpayers' money. So,
Yeah, it's really big on the internet. It's so sad because, like you mentioned, like 60 years ago, you could walk up to any brother on the street in Harlem, in Chicago, and be like, "Yeah, man, it's fucked up what they did to Patrice Lumumba," and he would know who Patrice Lumumba is. And
right,
now
yeah,
and now you walk up and man, you walk up to one of these dudes on the street nowadays and be like, "Hey, man, you seen what happened? What the fuck? What the fuck? Why do I give a fuck about what Gaza is? Do you not see what our neighborhood looks like, man?" Like it's just like you
right.
said, individualism. And back,
Individualism.
yeah, like back in the day, people were like, yeah, this is what like Malcolm said. If you don't know what's happening, if you can't get yourself together in the Congo, then we can't get ourselves together in Mississippi because we are a people in diaspora as Black people in the United States. And what happens to our brothers in Africa, what happens to our brothers in Palestine, is happening to us. Like they're usually the police that are killing our people in the United States. They're trained in Israel.
Yeah.
Uzis, all this
Mhm.
shit. Those are Israeli weapons. Like they made that stuff over there. The two things that Israel exports are weapons and drugs. Like all this, like ecstasy, MDMA, all that shit that comes from over there in Israel. They make that stuff over there.
Mhm.
So it's important. Like Black people have to care about what's going on in Palestine because this stuff is first of all, it's going to come over here like they're using the Palestinians as basically test subjects, like they used to do us for new forms of brutality. Like I saw a bomb they dropped it in the courtyard of a hospital, and a blade came out of it. It was like some shit you would see in the Terminator, and the thing is just spinning around and around and around, cutting off people's legs and stuff. So the next time we rise up in the streets of Memphis or St. Louis, where I live, or anywhere else, like we're going to be seeing that stuff deployed on us. The MRAPs that they use, they have sound cannons that target young people's ears and stuff that only we can hear. And that stuff can make you deaf. They've got weapons that can make you blind. They've got skunk spray that like they literally just drive through the West Bank every Sunday, just spraying. Like you literally have to have a special chemical that the company that makes the skunk spray produces. So it's like, yeah, and you can't get rid of that stuff. Like you will stink for a year. And these weapons of death, are being made, like you said, on our tax dollars. So it's ludicrous to call yourself a foundational Black American, or I'm just gonna worry about getting me a spot. Like there was an argument over Black landlords the other day. Like, why would you want to be a parasite that preys on your people, on your own people? Like y'all used to go out, and if the landlord was screwing over the community, well, first of all, like y'all didn't really have Black landlords. Y'all had like white people, white realty companies that would come in and be like, "Oh no, we're not renting to y'all. Y'all can't stay over there." But like nowadays, you've got this whole like LLC Twitter bro stuff. Like, oh yeah, let's just prey on our people. Let's try to be like the white man. No offense, Dominic, but yeah, he's just sitting here. Oh yeah, but like yeah, let's try to. They made it. They made it by screwing over people. Now let's make ours by screwing over people. That's a really screwed up way to think. And then like we get mad when people, our brothers and sisters overseas who are getting this stuff together, like in Burkina Faso, like in Mali, where like they've basically kicked the French out. Like we go over there and we start trying to talk to them, like, what are you guys doing over there? Like, what are you doing to take the pressure off of us? You guys are in the belly of the beast. And every time we turn on and we see Black Americans on the TV, y'all are throwing a ball around or y'all are killing each other over a new pair of shoes. Like you said, individualism. And I honestly think, like you mentioned, like all of this stuff was set up. They had to destroy or try to destroy the Black Panther Party because they knew that the Black Panther Party was the number one thing that was preventing them flooding our communities with all these drugs and weapons. Like, if you do not have a force to defend your community, then people are going to do like you had the mafia coming in. You had Black people that were working with the mafia to sell these drugs because they didn't care. Oh, I'm helping the Italians destroy my community. They didn't think, because like if you watch The Godfather, which if I recall correctly, didn't Huey make y'all watch The Godfather?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like if you watch The Godfather, I don't know if it was Tatalia or one of those dudes when they had that big meeting at the bank. He's like, "Oh yeah, don't sell this stuff in don't sell the stuff in our neighborhood. Sell it to the dark people. They're animals anyways. Let them lose their souls." And all these drug dealers, they watch The Godfather, they don't know that that was true. Like that's literally what these mafia people thought. But you have rappers and stuff running around calling themselves Young Gotti and shit. Like these people hated us. Well, that was a rant. So another thing, like you brought up the Black Lives Matter movement. A lot of these nonprofits and stuff, I've heard the analysis amongst people my age, like I'm 30. So I've heard the analysis amongst the younger generation of revolutionaries that like all these nonprofits and government agencies, like you have WIC, you have the free lunch program. They literally stole that from the Black Panther Party because y'all were the first to be giving out breakfast and lunch to kids in working class communities.
Well,
So,
let me back you up on that. No,
all right.
with the breakfast program, we did what we intended to do, which was what we set the example. We showed how to deliver services, social services to the people. You know, we set the example of how to do that. You know, and that's why the breakfast program was made into a national program, which is, you know, what we wanted to see. You know, and we opened up 13 free medical clinics, which forced the government to allocate money for community based medical clinics because there were no community based medical clinics at the time. But because the example that we were setting, we showed them that there needed to be community-based medical clinics. And so right after that, medical clinics began to, open up across the country. And our legal aid program, which we had lawyers in our office once a week, people could come talk to an attorney, and they would, that was made into a national program which still exists today. But also, a lot of our doctors, a lot of our lawyers, a lot of the nurses that we work with, they were white. Most of them were white, and they did this for free. They didn't ask for no salary. They didn't expect no salary. They were, the level of compassion was very high back then. Is very low now. But you had people volunteering their time to work in our clinics, to work in our legal aid program and providing assistance for the people.
Yeah, like you imagine trying to get a doctor who makes 800 grand a year now, and like that's the thing. Like back then, well, I guess it has something to do with the fact that like you mentioned Reagan deregulating and gutting everything. I read the analysis once that the reason why like all these student loans and stuff exists, like to be a doctor in the first place, if you're not already from a rich family, or to be
Yeah.
a lawyer, if you're not already from a rich family, you have to get into hundreds and thousands of dollars in debt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Let me jump in on that. See, when Ronald Reagan started cutting all that money, and so what happened was a lot of that money was going to subsidized education. It was going to colleges. A lot of that money was going to hospitals, from Medicare to hospitals. And when he did those cuts, the hospitals no longer could make a profit. So they turned into for profit. And that's the same thing with the college campuses. Back then, college campuses weren't, they started calling the heads of the president of the college CEOs, and turned it into a business, turned it into a money making operation. And that subsidized, when we went to college, we didn't realize at the time that our financial loans and all that stuff was subsidized, and so they were very low. It was affordable. We were able to, you know, pay our student loans off. But as the colleges became more corporate oriented, not only did they become more corporate oriented, but they also set up a class system where if you weren't tenured, then you had to get on food stamps if you were a professor. You had to get on medical care because you weren't getting paid enough. But the people who were tenured were getting paid big money, and that also eliminated a lot of more progressive and radical professors being hired to work at a lot of these colleges and universities.
yeah, and now you
Yeah, I
have
would
you
say
have
the most radical professors I've ever seen have all been at the community colleges. Like at Seattle Central, they now have really strong both socialist and anti-racist programs because other radicals were like, I want to work in that community because I can actually have a stable job there and get a full class complement.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you've got Donald Trump and like copying Ron DeSantis. Like there's this war on anything that could be seen as being woke, which is literally a black derived term. So it's basically a war on blackness. But like you've got them that are literally it's like the whole Nazi book burning thing. Like in Florida, they're trying to make it illegal to teach black history. And Trump is trying to do this on a national scale. It's like and then you've got them I think the governor of Oklahoma is just now saying that to graduate from high school, so the state can deny you a high school diploma. Well, I guarantee you it'll be challenged in the courts, but the state can now basically, according to the governor, deny you a high school diploma if you're not at a trade school. You can either join the military or you have to be like you have to have an acceptance letter from a college. So you can't get into any apprenticeship programs or anything like that without a high school diploma. So he's basically again, like you mentioned, it's constant class warfare. They want to grit and grind down working class and poor youth of all races. Like Oklahoma has a very large indigenous population. So um, it and as contradictions expand, I definitely think that we will see an upsurge in an actual disciplined revolutionary movement in this country because, like you mentioned, when your back is to the wall, like when you're going up against Jim Crow, when you're going up against all these horrible things, like you'll basically be forced to rebuild that culture that was destroyed by the individualism of the late 70s and the 80s. Otherwise, you're going to basically condemn yourself to ruin. And I think that, like, we all know that humans are a very adaptable species. We're also very, very good at like defending our self-interests. So the self-interests of working class poor youth is to get together, because I don't think nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to die a miserable death from climate change or at the hands of the police or from starving to death. So there's really no option to
I'm
get to.
sorry. I had to laugh at that because as far as climate change is concerned, it is upon us. It's here. It's now. We're safe. We're facing destruction right now. But ask yourself, has that moved the needle of the people to want to address that? Has that moved the needle for people to want to come together and make these oil corporations and coal companies to stop what they're doing? No, it hasn't. It hasn't. It hasn't moved the needle in terms of resistance whatsoever. I don't know if you read Octavia Butler's book, Parable of the Sower, but you should read that book because she lays out everything that is happening to us right now. And the other issue is the identity politics that we have. In the movement, we had a lot of gay people that we worked with, and we worked with a lot of different people, but nobody was demanding that you recognize us as this or you recognize us as that. We were all revolutionaries. We were all in the same boat together. We didn't have all these splits between all these different things. And unfortunately, we just have too much identical politics. People mainly fighting for their own interests. My cousin, who is in Chicago, and I was on the phone with him recently, and when he told me that he voted for Donald Trump, I went off on his ass. And I asked him, I said, "Why did you vote for Trump?" He said, "Because of immigration." And I said to him, I said, "Is that the main reason why you voted for him?" I said, "There are so many other issues that are so important to us." I said, "The number one issue that we have is global warming. If anything, if you know about global warming, if you are concerned about global warming, then you would have not have voted for Trump because he is definitely going to escalate the needle like he did before when he was in office, when he got rid of the regulations modifying the amount of pollution that could be put in the air. He turned those things back when he got in, and during that 4 year time period, there were almost about 150,000 people that died just from the bad air alone. And when Biden got back, which is one of the few things that the Democrats do, he switched it back. But Trump has already said he's going to get rid of those regulations, and he said, "Drill, baby, drill." That's what he said. Drill, baby, drill. Which is the last thing we need is more drilling. Of course, the Democratic Party hasn't been as strong as they should have been on that, but we know it's going to be much worse um, under Trump. So, I wish I felt your optimism that people are going to get so desperate they're going to come together but look at all the homeless people. I mean, when I was coming up, uh, we would not have allowed for people to be sleeping on the streets and people in tents. People had a level of compassion that we wouldn't allow that in our communities. you know, and this homeless issue is growing more and more, and it's going to grow much more when Trump gets into office. Um, and and you know, like I said, we're dumbed down. We are really dumbed down society. We're dumb. Okay, American people are dumb. Let me just be point blank. They some dumb motherfuckers. So we got a lot to overcome. I think you know, maybe when things get down to you know, maybe after these next 4 years of Trump, maybe people will come together. Maybe the poor whites will come together. Maybe the poor Latinos will come together. You know, when we had the Rainbow Coalition, we had the Young Lords, we had the Young Patriot Party, which was made up of poor white people. Many of these poor white people who are the people that support Trump.
Mhm.
And, you know, they don't, it, we can blame Obama for Trump. Okay. You know, when Obama became president, I ran for U.S. Senate against Maria Cantwell with the Peace and Freedom Party. And so I spent a lot of time in the conservative part of the state, talking to a lot of poor people who had been affected by NAFTA, a lot of poor white people. They were sleeping in trailer homes, they lost their farms and everything. And the largest percentage of votes that I got in the state of Washington was from poor conservative white people. And so when Obama decided to run for president, and people would tell me, black people would say, man, white folks ain't gonna vote for Obama. I said, yes, they will. I said, they'll vote for a damn Martian. If a Martian came down from the planet, whatever, and said, I promise you this, they would have voted for him. Now, when Obama gets in office and they had the breakdown, the economic crash of 2008, Obama had a choice. He had a choice to help the people, bail the people out who were suffering tremendously, white and black and Latino. What did he do? He chose to bail out Wall Street. He chose to
Yep.
bail out the banks. And
I was I was in high
so
school when that happened.
yeah,
I
and
remember
so
that.
when Trump starts to, all those people that voted for Trump are people who had voted for Obama, but Obama failed in his mission because he was just like the people he was running against. You know, he was just another corporate person who hates revolutionaries. I must say, Obama and his wife, that type of black people, they hate revolutionaries. That's why he put that extra $1 million bounty on Asada Shakur's head. She already had $1 million bounty on her head, and he put another $1 million on her head. So you know, this is what we're dealing with. This is the type of people we're dealing with. The Democratic Party is a piece of shit. The Republican Party is a piece of shit. And until people realize the only justice that we're going to have through the electoral process is we have to create a another party that represents all of us, that represents all the people in all racial breakdowns and all economic breakdowns. And you're starting to see this kind of breaking up of the mega movement already in some of Trump's policies, you know, and
Yeah.
he hasn't even taken office yet. So
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
may be a glimmer of hope. He may be so bad that people will be so fed up with not only the Republican Party, but with the Democratic Party. And maybe there might be an opening where we could create a stronger party that really represents all people.
Yeah, I think that's my hope as well. Like Americans, like I think it was Huey that said that he said Black Americans, but I think we could expand that to say all Americans are not a reading people. Like I've got stacks and stacks of books behind me. They used to roast me in high school for being, oh, BRG's a nerd. All he want to do is sit up and read all day. And like, I mean, that's how you educate yourself. But like Americans really don't read anything besides Bible and self-help books. So I think like Americans are people. They're a practical people. They're hands-on people. Like if we Americans have to be shown things. So
Right. Yeah.
so like we could talk to a blue in the face, like, yes, you American imperialism. This is what's happening. Like, I laughed at that cousin of yours that said that he voted for Trump because he's angry at the migrants. And then you mentioned climate control. Like, most of these migrants are migrants from like NAFTA, which destroyed the Mexican corn industry. That's why most of those farmers down there are growing weed or getting involved with the cartels, because their ancient methods of living have been destroyed. And you have climate change. Like, most of these people, like, why is somebody coming from Lagos, Nigeria? Because Lagos is sinking. It's a coastal city. It's built on islands. So, like, these people are coming over here because, for one, like, we've got all their stuff. America's an imperialist country. It lives off of taking food out of other people's mouths. So, naturally, they're going to follow the money. And then, like, we've destroyed their countries with endless wars or backing of these proxies. Like, we're about to get a shitload of Syrian refugees now. Well, we've always been getting Syrian refugees since the past 10 years, but we're going to get even more now because we've destroyed their country.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, but those they're going to hit Europe. They've
yeah,
already hit Europe when their first wave of migration, and they're going to be hitting Europe again, which is turning anti-immigration.
yep,
And and yeah, it's going to be very devastating. It's going to be devastating in the
yeah.
future.
Yeah, because nobody wants to leave their homeland. This is what a lot of
No.
Americans don't understand. Like, a dude in Oaxaca, Mexico, is not just going to be like, oh, I just want to come to America because I want to pick tomatoes for 75 cents. No, they're leaving because there is no place else to go. They're leaving because their country, their methods of life have been destroyed, and America really is the only place they can have somewhat of a decent living. They're coming here because America ruined the places where they live, and it's not even a revention. They're not even consciously making these decisions. These are desperate people. And, like, just like there's internal migration. Why did our ancestors leave the South? Because you had the Ku Klux Klan. Nobody wanted to be chained to a plantation for the rest of their lives. Like, my grandma grew up on a cotton plantation in Itabena, Mississippi in the 40s and 50s. I asked her, like, Grandma, why did you leave where you come from to come up here? Because she said, I couldn't. She couldn't go to college down there. She said that if she went to college, that plantation owner would have put her mom in so much debt she would have died in a cotton field. Why did her brothers come up here? Why did her great uncles come up here? Because it was work in the war industries. They got tired of having to get off the sidewalk. They got tired of picking somebody else's cotton, then getting cheated every time settlement day come. Like that, nobody wants to live like that. People want a decent standard of living. So I do not begrudge anybody that comes to this country, especially because we hoard so much of the world's wealth. Like these Fortune 500 companies, Coca Cola, um, Pfizer, Lever Brothers, all these companies, they, like, you look at why is there war in Africa? These wars are over resources. They back these various militias that are fighting over who gets to sell shit to the Americans, who gets to sell shit to the Chinese, who gets to sell shit to the Europeans. Like, these are resource wars. Um, Another question. Let's see. You mentioned in your memoir that several of your earliest recruits in the Seattle branch, people like Mike Togawa, were working class Asian comrades who identified with and had grown up around black people. So our generation, like millennials and Zoomers, um, there's a lot of struggle between the black and Asian youth communities, and to a greater extent, it's now with Arabs. That's why there's a lot of, like, I guess, wishy-washiness on Palestine, and I think a lot of it comes from the black petty bourgeoisie because we see in black neighborhoods, like, okay, like in your time, Comrade Aaron, like you had black business owners in the community, right? Like black corner store owners, black laundromat owners, etc. But nowadays, I think a lot of people they see, especially the black petty bourgeoisie, people that want to own bars, liquor stores, etc. We see a lot of those positions being held by people of Arab descent or people of Asian descent. Um, so I think a lot of that resentment between black people and Arabs, I think it's competition, economic competition. So, do you think that it's possible to rebuild the grassroots working class organic solidarity? that existed in your Seattle?
Oh, well, Seattle has been totally gentrified. The tech companies have completely destroyed Seattle. I hate going back there to Seattle because it's you all you see is condos and all these new buildings and new construction. The community I grew up in is completely almost wiped out. There are some black people in Seattle. This brother who runs Africa Town that was able to buy a lot of buildings and develop, housing and other things for people in the community. Um, I don't. It really boils down to uh, the things that happen. What are we faced with, and what are we going to be faced with? Are those things going to be enough to drive us together? The reason why a lot of Japanese moved into black neighborhoods because when they came back from the internment camps, they couldn't go back to their land, so they ended up in close to South Central. They grew up in North Oakland, San Francisco, where the Fillmore district is, was a black Japanese community that came about after the internment camps, and um, and so those are the things that forced them to be closer to our community, and they were progressive. We got a lot of contributions for Japanese businessmen during the party days in Seattle. And I didn't understand. I was confused why this Japanese mechanic was always willing to donate money to us. And it wasn't until I really learned about the internment camps that I understood why Japanese chose to contribute and support the Black Panther Party. In Oakland, one of the first field marshals of the Black Panther Party was Richard
Richard?
Aoki, who
Yeah.
was Japanese, who supplied the party with its first batch of weapons. In Seattle, we had Mike Tagawa. We also had a brother named Guy Carosi. He would go on to become a world champion and black belt twice over. But he was very young when he joined. He was wild and crazy. But we had a Filipino that joined. So there was a lot more unity. There were Latinos that joined the Black Panther Party in the Bay Area. Um, so um, uh, there's just so much division now against communities and against each other because of the competition and all everything else. you know um but the hope is that as things get worse, that we will start becoming closer together and get rid of our identity politics, and you know be concerned about all communities. We
Yeah.
in 19 I think it was 1969 we started the United Front Against Fascism, and we opened up United Front Against Fascism programs all across the country that were manned by a lot of different people, a lot of different colors and backgrounds. And we were a united front against fascism, you know, which is something we need right now. We need a united front against fascism and the super predatory capitalism. The hope is that as things get worse, as they will, that maybe we can come together and work together. But I can't call it. I can't call it.
I have a coworker that says that all the time. I can ask him something. Oh, I can't call it. One of my favorite sayings. Dominic, you're sitting up there looking sad. Why don't you ask Comrade Aaron a question?
Oh no, I'm thinking Carmen, I actually read your book in like 2 days while working in Seattle uh in my the transit I work for DESC, so I work for one of the transitional housing authorities up here. A few things popped out to me. I think the interesting one was that learning that Rainier Beach used to be a working class white school, because growing up in Seattle, it was the most underfunded school, in large part because it was uh, you well, you grew up and organized in Seattle. You know how racist the education and school funding is here. But it was the blackest school in Seattle. Um, um, I think what I found interesting about your I found a lot of interesting about your book, but how do you think, with a lot of communities being pushed out, are being pushed? Uh, almost want to say scattered to the wind, because that's what I've been finding a lot. Um, what do you think about the ability to rebuild a lot of those community connections, if that makes sense at all?
Well, that's a good question, and that takes me to what I was just thinking about. That we should talk about is, you know, people. We always said all power to the people, and the people have the ability to make changes. People have the power and ability to do a lot of things, but the question is, why won't they do it now? Elaine Brown, who is 81 years old, she'll soon be 82. She spent 10 years, raised $90 million, and was able to develop a 80 unit housing complex for people coming out of prison and people who were homeless. And it's called the Black Panther. And when she started developing this, there were other developers. There were 5 other developers that began developing housing for people in Oakland. And she was the
Aaron froze.
Uh-oh.
Oh no. Think he'll be back. I think he's probably try to re-click the link again.
Yeah, I just texted him.
We just had an awkward interaction with biters. With bikers on
Okay.
the way home, sitting here watching this. Yeah, how do you all even get in these situations? How did you even get over there? It feels sad. Yeah. Okay, comrade's back.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm back.
Got
Yeah.
you. Yeah, hear
Okay,
you loud and clear.
so we're talking about Elaine Brown. You know, this 81-year-old woman who built a motherfucking housing program, a house for people coming out of prison and people who are homeless. Now, why can't other people do that? You know, we have the ability to develop housing. We have the ability to build housing. Why can't other people do that? We have all these millionaires and billionaire athletes who have tons of money, and plus the people in the music industry, plus the people in Hollywood. You know, the money is there. You know, we need the desire. We need people who have the desire and who are dedicated and who want to help um, create better housing and better anything else that people need. You know, we got the ability to do that. But the question is, how come people aren't doing it? You know, why won't
Dom-
people do it?
Dominic, you
I
down? Let's draft a resolution for next year's convention. Let's build a DSA housing development.
I
And,
I'm down. We
and, and
Aaron,
oh,
once, yeah.
I ran a nonprofit in Seattle called Central House. And we opened up a transition housing program, and we had the best transition housing program in the county. They sent all our resources to us. We had 5 youth leadership projects, 5 different schools. But the challenge was I had to go outside and hire Black Panther Party members to run some of these programs because I could not rely on the other people that I were hiring. They were not dedicated and they were not going to do what had to be done. I had to go out and hire some damn Black Panthers and bring them in to run the transition housing program and run the youth leadership project. You know, I've been recently contacted by a brother in Seattle, Dominic Davis, who runs a large nonprofit that works with gangs and at-risk youth. He's very smart. He knows how to get money, but he's had problems in hiring dedicated staff. You know, he hires these people, and the people don't do the work. They're only concerned about is getting a paycheck. So he's hiring me. He's bringing me in, train his staff to teach them about compassion, about dedication, about how important it is to be dedicated, and how they have the ability to be able to change and transform things in the community. But it's going to take discipline. It's going to take dedication. You know. So and you know, the one thing that Huey taught us is think big. You know, people think small. You got to think big. You got to think big, you know. Like when we took over the city of Oakland, we took over the freaking city of Oakland. You know, we put the first black mayor in office and we were in his office running the damn city of Oakland because our leader told us how to think big and we were able to do that. So that's what people have to do. They got to think big. And so yeah, you guys could get yourselves together and you could, you know, create, you know, get funding and create your, you know, create some housing or whatever you want to do.
So one of the
Definitely.
big campaigns here, Aaron, is I don't know how much you know about How's Our Neighbors here in Seattle, but we finally got a social housing program through last year. And now, if there are any Seattleites in the audience, by the way, vote for Prop 1A. Otherwise, you're an asshole. But it's the funding for our social housing program. So we have this, you know, public and social housing that can't be privatized. But there's like a push to now do that down in Tacoma because of that type of work. Like, and there's actually also a push to do here down in Tequila on the south side as well. See, I always I blank out on what. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a little tired. I just got off of work last night, but um, yeah, I completely lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, y'all.
Oh, that's all
Dominic
right. That's all right. I do it all the time, but I'm motivated.
Dominic Dominic the dissociator.
Um,
But yeah, as somebody that works in the unhoused field as well, what you know, one thing I've noticed is that there's a shitload of communists and anarchists that work in the unhoused field.
So many.
Like, and the funny thing is, like the institution I work for is Catholic. I'm like, do you realize that you guys employ like half the movement in St. Louis? But yeah, that's a really like big problem. Like, and then I'm a firm believer in what Mao would call social investigation and class analysis. Like, you cannot have people that are making policy that in regard to the unhoused without coming to like swing a shift as, I don't know, a shelter monitor or something like that, because you don't know anything. And what's going to happen is you're going to either give people resources that they don't need, or you're going to under resource things. So it's important to like actually like talk to people who are unhoused, talk to people who are at risk of becoming unhoused. And yeah, it's very, very emotionally draining work. Like, people throw around the term emotional labor, like that's emotional labor. Like, you're going to deal with people who have been sexually assaulted. You're going to deal with people who are in the throes of drug addiction. Like, you're basically going to see all of the problems that Aaron and me and you have just spent the past hour and a half talking about. But it's necessary work. Like, all of these little weird leftists on the internet, like, I could tell that they don't go outside, they don't go amongst the people, because the things that they're saying, it's just bizarre. It's divorced from reality. And the people that throw around the term dialectical and historical materialism, they don't know what these things are because they haven't, like, they've basically scurrilously red marks and they don't know what they're talking about. Like, you have to actually go amongst the people. That's one thing that the Black Panther Party taught. You have to be with the people. You can't just wall yourself up on the internet. Like, I'm so glad that y'all didn't have computers and shit back in the day, Aaron. I'm so glad. Like, y'all had to actually go outside.
Yeah. Go to a phone booth.
Go to a phone. Now we've got these. Now you can just ooh. But like to make a call and harass somebody, you actually had to go. You actually had to go use the phone booth. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but like that's another difference. Like now everybody thinks that they could be a radical on social media, whereas back then, if the people didn't know you, you weren't nothing. Like okay, the who, the what, where y'all was at when the police beat up dude the other week? Like the people would actually call you on that stuff. And that's why I think the Black Panther Party was so loved by the people, because if there was a problem in the community, then the Black Panther Party didn't just talk or tweet or post about it. They actually went and found out what the hell was going on. And next thing you know, you got a program. And that's what a lot of people, I think, in these so-called revolutionary organizations today don't understand. Like the people they're not posting. They're actually going through this stuff. So touch grass is not just a meme. It's something that you actually have to do. That's something that I've been constantly promoting for DSA members. Like you all engage in all this little like weird political infighting. You talk to somebody in the hood, they don't know what the hell DSA is because DSA ain't there. So you want
Go
to
do a
solve the diversity.
breakfast program, guys.
Yeah. You know, one of the most important things about the party, first of all, we had principles. We got reading and study. We had actually principles that guided us and that we followed, you know. Um, no
Remember,
investigation, no right to
remember.
speak. That was one of the things that we used a lot. But also, the most important thing to understand is um, putting things into practice. You can theorize and talk about things all you want, but the result, you're going to get the result when you put something into practice, when you actually do something about what you're talking about. And that's Fred Hampton talked about a lot of putting things into practice. When we got orders to open up a breakfast program, I got a memo in the mail. It didn't say anything about how to do it. It just said you got to open up a breakfast program, and so we did. We went to churches, we went to community centers near schools. The first food we got for our breakfast program, we wrote it our parents' refrigerator. Until we learned that we had to have somebody coordinated who went out and got things donated, so we make sure we always had everything we needed for our program. So it's about putting things into practice. And once you start practicing and putting things into practice, you eventually learn and you eventually get better. When we had to open up a medical clinic, we had no blueprint for that. They didn't say how to open up a medical clinic. They just said you got to open up a medical clinic. And that's what we did. We contacted a doctor who smoked a lot of hash and had long hair. And he told us to back up a truck in front of the UW hospital. And we loaded that shit up with all the things that we needed. And bam, we had a freaking medical clinic that's still open today, the Carolyn Downs Free Medical Clinic. So it's
You know,
putting theory into practice, putting shit into practice. Because you can talk about shit all day long, but until you actually get down to the nitty gritty and putting that shit into practice, you just running your mouth.
yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of Americans will relate to. Like in every discussion about like revolutionary theory and practice that I've engaged in, like with the masses, the main thing that they'll say is that okay, y'all talk about like revolutionaries talk a lot of shit, but we don't see them when they come out after the police kill somebody. Y'all used to prevent the police from killing people.
Right.
Nowadays, all of the various Maoist study groups or whatever, they only come about and they're not even there because they actually care about the masses. Most of these people, they only seem like they're trying to recruit people to build their little book club or whatever. So
Mhm.
again, back to Huey's definition of power, which is the definition of power that I use. Power is the ability to define a phenomenon and make it act in the according manner. So take the police. The police are a phenomenon. Okay. Responding after they kill somebody, that's really not okay. That's what they expect. But actually preventing them, whether it be through cop watch programs, whether it be through like organizing the masses for cop watch, like preventing these things from happening to our young comrades in the first place. So I think the main thing that the movement needs to learn is like what power actually is. And then secondly, it's the importance of practice. I pulled up Miles' article on practice um, during your discussion on practice. Um, but yeah, like people, you cannot just read a bunch of communist books and think that that makes you a communist. Marx himself would disagree with that. Lenin, Mao, like okay, if all of them could come back today, they would be like, okay, you all say that you all are followers of our theory and practice. Why have you not made a revolution yet? Why have you not organized the people? Why have you not organized them for revolution yet? And like all of the excuses, that's not going to fly. Mao especially didn't play that shit. He would be like, okay, so you claim that you're a Maoist or whatever. Where's the revolution? Where's your people's army? Why aren't you guys like people hit up like people roast me because I'm a Maoist in the DSA? Like, okay, like what? I'm where the majority of people who call themselves socialists in the United States are. So, like we mentioned earlier, I would say that dogma and divorce from the masses is probably the main reason why our modern day movement hasn't got our stuff together.
There's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons. It's, when you look at history and look at how things change and evolve and things happen, it's never one thing. It's always a series of things. Ronald Reagan wasn't just the one thing that did what he did, but it was a whole bunch of other things, and it was where our society was moving that allowed for us to get to this point. And so, we have to understand that it's never just one thing. It's a series of things. And we have to be able to analyze and put things into perspective. Um, yeah.
All right. So I guess probably the I would say the last question is so what would be your advice for comrades like myself, like black revolutionaries, revolutionaries in general, who look to the organization that you helped build, the Black Panther Party, for self defense? What would be your advice for comrades like ourselves who are several decades younger than you? What would you say to people like us who look to your organization as an inspiration in the 21st century?
I'll say the first thing is if you can get a group of people that are concerned about a specific issue and focus on that issue, focus on improving that issue and making changes in that issue, and working together and reading together and studying together, and make it your goal to change whatever it is, that issue that you are focused on. I think that is probably the easiest thing to do, is find out what is the situation that is most troublesome in your community, and what is it the what is it, and is it something that you could bring people together to affect change around it. I and start out small. As I said, you got to think big, but you got to start out small, and understanding that everything is a process, step by step. Everything is a process. So pick out something that you want to try to address, something that you want to change, and work on that and do that. And if you're able to do that one thing, then you can move on to other things, and you can attract other people who want to get involved and who want to, be part of changing something else, or changing, creating, you know, helping food people to be able to eat, or helping people to be able to get housing, or, helping people that are in prison, incarcerated. You know, like we had a busing to prisons program. You know, we provided transportation to the different prisons in the state, whatever state we were in. On the weekends, we took people to visit their loved ones in the prison. When we started out, we just had cars. You know, maybe a van we borrowed from somebody. But in Chicago, they were given a Greyhound bus. In Seattle, we were given a brand new 32-seat passenger school bus. And in other places, they were able to get things. So, you know, like in North Carolina, Winston-Salem, they started a free ambulance program. You know, the ambulance they had was a piece of shit, but they were able to use it for what they needed to do. People would call the office for emergency or whatever, and the same person who answered the phone would be the same person to get in the ambulance and go to wherever the situation was. You know, so you know, you start out small doing things, and then you attract attention of people who maybe have some resources or maybe some people who help. Um, and then you know you're moving forward.
Okay. Very good advice from an elder comrade. So again, um, let me pull my screen share back up. Uh, the situation in Rojava, it's Rojava. I'm going to get the pronunciation right. I don't speak Kurmanji, but I can at least deign to learn how to pronounce the place. Um, but the situation in Rojava is fluid, and comrades over there need help. If you have posted or if you have supported with your Twitter fingers the revolution in Rojava, then you need to come out of your pocket and you need to put your money where your mouth is. Why? Because we cannot just simply watch as
Of the
people suffer and struggle and die.
Emergency Committee for Rojava. And I'm here to tell you about our work in solidarity with the people of Northeast Syria, where an inspiring movement led by Kurdish women is building and defending a society rooted in direct democracy, women's liberation, cooperation, and ecology. The peoples of Rojava are proving every day that another world is possible. But Rojava is in danger. After facing years of war and occupation from the forces of ISIS and Turkey, the threat of a major escalation is on the table yet again. Last month, Turkey launched a series of devastating attacks, bombing critical infrastructure, killing civilians, and disrupting vital services. And now, Turkish President Erdogan is looking eagerly to the incoming Trump administration to approve another all-out invasion. In times like these, Rojava must not stand alone. That's why we need your help. ECR is dedicated to building a grassroots solidarity movement by raising awareness about this inspiring revolution and bringing people together to support it. To this end, we spent the last year organizing and spreading the word through speaking tours, study groups, articles, interviews, coalition building, advocacy, and demonstrations. This work is only made possible through the support of people like you. We have ambitious plans for 2025, but we need resources to see them through. Your tax-deductible contribution will enable us not to only sustain our existing work and a part-time staff member, but to launch several new exciting and urgent projects, including a multimedia education series, a mutual aid network support for the Kurdish migrant community, and a campaign mobilizing public pressure against any attempt by the new US administration to back a Turkish invasion. Join us in the spirit of international solidarity. Thank you, and Biji Rojava.
So yeah, that's pretty much what's going on. This is why the emergency committee for Rojava exists. So the steering committee includes Debbie Bookchin, who is not just Murray Bookchin's daughter. She's also an author, and long-term journalist in her own right, a writer and speaker on municipalism, and who also served as press secretary to Bernie Sanders for 3 years. So I know a lot of you people donated to Bernie Sanders. You should also donate to the emergency committee for Rojava, because Rojava may actually win. Bernie Sanders probably won't. He's too old. You also have Oslam Gunnar, a professor at the College of Staten Island. You have Anya Bree, a New York-based researcher and journalist focusing on the Kurdish issue in Syria and Turkey. And you also have Arthur Pai, who is a writer and organizer based in the Pacific Northwest. So, good group of people. And there's also a lot of educational resources, a shitload of educational resources that you can access to learn all you need to know about what's going on in Kurdistan. So probably the most interesting thing about the Kurdish struggle for me is that they bear a lot of similarity to Maoist revolutionary movements in that there is immense participation of women. If I recall correctly, the revolution in Nepal, it was like majority women at some point. So is the revolution in Peru. Kurdistan is the same way. And there's a lot of writings by Abdullah Öcalan, who's like the ideological father of this movement, and a variety of other people. So, yeah, you should check it out.
Their form of feminism is also fascinating in itself.
Yeah. Any advice on keeping motivated and losing hope? Drugs? I mean, no drugs. I don't take drugs. Drugs are bad for you. Just realizing that we have to win. Like, we simply cannot. We cannot give up hope. We cannot be nihilistic doomers, because when you do that, like, what's the point of doing any of this? What's the point of being here? What's the point of being in a political organization? What's the point of doing anything? Like, you might as well just, as we discussed earlier, we might as well just give up. Let's just fall into nihilism and hedonism, right? Let's just go out and exploit people and make a shitload of money and not do anything besides ensure our own aggrandizement. I don't know about you, Dominic, but that's not the way I want to live.
Yeah, I don't. I think another big part of it is like, look, we're in some dark times a lot of the time, in the imperial calling out, but looking to the silver lining is really important. I have been doing community organizing work for about a decade now, and was in a community organizing household for about 16 years before that. The only way to get through is to see where we have won and what we can learn, instead of just saying total losses, because it's never just a total loss. Especially, like, let's look at the Sanders campaign, for example, 2016. He loses. You also get the rebirth of this American socialist movement in any sizable capacity. Let's look at Occupy. Occupy, in a lot of ways, fails. At the same time, it's where a lot of key anti-capitalist organizing starts in the United States. Of this generation and the last generation starts in the United States. So it's looking at, we have lost, but we have also won at the same time. These are not, it's not a yes and no thing, if that makes any sense.
After I leave here, I'm just going to just read all of these articles. This is fascinating. Rojava is trying to build a green society, but Turkey is starving it of water and power. This
Oh
is
yeah,
exactly
it's a
like
big
this
problem.
is exactly what would happen if black people had our own like state in the United States. Like, do we just think that the white people would be like, oh, well, we can't send them back to Africa, so just send them to their own ethno state? Like, no, they would literally fuck us over hard. Like the Republic of New Africa, they actually tried to buy land in Mississippi, but the feds and the local cops raided it. And I find it hilarious how many like white racists oppose black nationalism. Like, you all literally spent the past few centuries telling us to go back to Africa. Go back to Africa. Now, like Marcus Garvey, like he literally tried to establish the Black Star Line. Like he literally tried to get us to go back to Africa. And what happened? The feds sent to the federal prison and deported them. Like, what do you want us to do? Like, just vanish, rapture, disappear? Oh, Comrade Aaron is back. So that's pretty much all the questions that we have. Oh, somebody did ask, do you have any advice on keeping motivated and not losing hope?
Yeah, I mean, I lose hope. I get depressed. I have anxiety. I have all those things like any normal decent person would have. But my advice is to take up this one motto is always keep moving forward. Even when you do get depressed or whatever, yeah, go through that. But when you recover, you just always move forward. You're always continuously moving forward, you know, and that's the best advice that I can get is always keep moving forward. Things aren't going to be perfect. Things aren't always going to happen the way you want them to happen. But if you got a good plan, if you got a strategy, if you know what you want, you just keep moving forward.
Okay. Um, yeah, it's dialectics. Like you said, you were taught that everything is constantly in motion. Like that's why like people are constantly like, oh, we need to. I think Fred Hampton gave a really good speech on this as well. Like the cultural nationalists, the pork chop nationalists, I believe the Panthers called them.
Mhm.
Like the us organization type people who had a
Yeah.
variety of horrific problems with them, but like they're constantly trying to rediscover and no, not just rediscover, but live like people in Africa did in the medieval times. I'm like, bro, people don't live like that anymore. Like, and the thing is, like, oh, you've got the mistreatment of women is it for me. Like, you literally, okay, if Mao taught that women hold up half the sky, like, why would you just be like, you basically want to turn women into household drudges that bring you lemonade and pop out kids? Like, that's not how you treat a person. But we call them hoteps now. Y'all call them back in the day. Y'all called them pork chop nationalists, but we call them hoteps. Like those people still exist. Dr. Umar and those types.
Mhm.
And it's just a regressive, anti-dialectical cultural nationalism type thing. I mean, Molina Karenga did give us Kwanzaa, but that's pretty much it. I don't know. Nobody I know has ever celebrated Kwanzaa. I don't know anybody that celebrates Kwanzaa.
Yeah.
Do you celebrate Kwanzaa, brother Aaron? Comrade Aaron?
Hell no, man. We hate Ron Karinga. We
Yeah,
hate Ron Karinga and we hate Kwanzaa. We
yeah,
hate the fact that Ron Karinga is still alive.
yeah. Do
You
you
know,
think that Kwanzaa is being pushed like just because Ron Karinga came up with it? Like you can buy Kwanzaa cards, but you can't buy
Yeah.
Comrade Fred Hampton cards.
Right, right. You
Yeah,
can you can. Well, we created our revolutionary. During different holidays and stuff, we created revolutionary cards,
yeah,
revolutionary greeting cards. You know, um, and so 'cause we felt that uh, the revolutionary struggle was the one that was going to liberate us, not some cultural nationalist bullshit about going back to
yeah,
Africa and wearing dashikis and ubas is not going to save us. And we look and see what's happening in Mali and Niger, Burkina Faso and Chad. Kicking the damn French out and
yeah,
taking their resources back. You don't see them wearing no African garb. They're wearing military garb.
yeah. Because they're in war. These are
'Cause,
soldiers.
yeah, they're soldiers, So and we want to try to duplicate ourselves. Let's duplicate ourselves into what these poor countries are doing in Africa. And
Yeah,
kicking the French out and claiming their resources for themselves.
yeah. It's like Malcolm taught us. Like if you ain't got the land, you ain't got shit. Like you can have all the daishiki and boo boo and grand boo boo all you want, but you still gonna be broke. Or like Fred Hampton said, like you can Africanize yourself all you want. Like look at Papa Doc Duvalier. Like he was as African as they come. The man practiced voodoo, but at the end of the day, he was still an enemy of his. He sold his own people's blood to the United States. He had this one of his colleagues, Luc Cambron. They called him the Vampire of the Caribbean. He was literally selling his own people's blood and corpses up here to American medical schools. But
Mm.
he was African. Like he was dark skinned. Like he was like, okay, if you're against me, then you're an enemy of the black people. And it's like that's nonsense. But a lot of that nonsense, it gets a lot of play today because we have no real revolutionary movement that can take like Black Lives Matters and cutting it. Those are a bunch of cultural nationalists, basically the modern day heirs of Ron Karenga.
And opportunists.
Yeah.
We're
So we have to, yeah, but we've got a lot of work to do. And I'm really, really glad that Comrade Aaron was able to come on and give us a piece of the revolutionary experience that he has gone through in his life. And again, my people are rising. You have to get this book. You have to learn from our elders, because a lot of our elders are no longer with us. So those of us that we do have that remain with us, we have to cherish and treasure and learn from. So I'm really, really honored and glad that you were able to join us today, Comrade.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, and I wish you all luck in trying to reinvigorate the struggle and working towards saving humanity.
All right, thank you. All power to the people.
Okay, all power to the people. Thank you.
All power to the people.
Yeah, you could say it too, Dominic. Jesus.
Okay, sorry, I'm also congested.